Take that ice down or I'm calling the cops. That's the first thing this woman, who looked like she'd just come from a yoga meltdown, screamed at me while I was hammering the last tent stake by my lake. She actually did it. She called 911 because I set up a tent on my own land. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a nosy neighbor. This was a full-blown HOA queen bee with a chip on her shoulder, and I'd just stepped on her turf without even knowing. What happened next? Well, let's just say she ended up needing my permission to get to her own driveway. Ever dealt with a neighborhood bully? Stick around. This is the kind of revenge story that starts with a clipboard and ends with poetic justice. It was supposed to be one of those peaceful golden afternoons, the kind you work years for. After grinding away in real estate for 15 straight years, I finally bought my dream house out on Lake Morrison. 2-story colonial private dock, nothing but water and sky out the back door, and enough trees between me and the neighbors to feel like I'd actually made it. 36 and retired early, and all I wanted was one quiet evening. So I pitched a little camping tent down by the lake, nothing fancy, just me, the sunset, and the sound of water lapping at the dock. I'd barely finished hammering the last tent stake when I heard the rapid-fire click of high heels coming straight for me, like an IRS auditor, with a vengeance. That's when Melanie Voss stormed into my life. Clipboard clenched, tight lips pursed like she'd been sucking lemons since dawn. She didn't say hello, didn't ask if I was new. She just started barking, "Who are you, and how dare you set up a tent here?" I tried to keep it friendly. "Hi, I'm Dean, just bought this place. Got the paperwork on the patio if you want to see it." But she cut me off before I could get another word in, said it wasn't my land, that my tent was ruining the HOA vision. Now I've dealt with plenty of tough personalities in my career, but something about Melanie's tone just made the hairs on my neck stand up. She talked like she owned the whole block, like I was trespassing on her personal fiefdom. Still, I kept my cool, told her it was private property, not violating any city code, even offered to show her the deed. She wasn't interested in facts, only her precious HOA rules. "You need to take that tent down immediately," she snapped, like she expected me to salute and start packing up. I tried one more time, walked over, grabbed the deed, homeowner's insurance, the tax records, brought it all back and laid it out for her. "Look, I own this land and I've got every right." But she didn't care. "I don't care what those papers say. I'm calling the authorities." That's when I knew this wasn't just some misunderstanding. This was about power. She genuinely believed she could dictate what happened on my property. So right in front of me, she whipped out her phone and made a show of dialing 911. I'm not kidding, she went full community theater, telling the dispatcher, "There's a strange man trespassing and setting up illegal camping equipment in our neighborhood." She pointed at me like I was an escaped convict. You ever stand there listening to someone try to make you sound like a criminal for putting up a tent in your own backyard? It's surreal and infuriating. At that point, something flipped inside me. Up until then, I'd tried to be reasonable. But when she called the cops on me for just being on my own land, I realized I was up against a real bully. I decided to fight fire with fire. "Okay, Melanie." I thought, let's see how you handle someone who's not scared of your little HOA badge. 25 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up. Officer Barry Clark stepped out, looking like this was the last place he wanted to be. Before he could even get his bearings, Melanie rushed him, pointing at me like I'd robbed a bank. "Officer, thank God you're here. He's trespassing on community property and refusing to follow our guidelines." I calmly walked up, handed over my paperwork, deed, tax bill, insurance, everything. Years in real estate taught me paperwork beats drama every time. Officer Clark flipped through the documents, nodded, and told her, "Ma'am, you understand that misusing emergency services is a misdemeanor, right?" But Melanie kept pushing, said my crime scene colored tent was breaking HOA aesthetics. The cop looked like he'd heard this song before. "HOA doesn't beat the law, ma'am. Mr. Harrington can use his property as he sees fit." The look on her face, just pure shock, then denial, then rage, worth every penny I'd ever paid in closing costs. Officer Clark handed back my paperwork and told me, "Enjoy your property, sir." Then he left, and Melanie was just vibrating with anger. She stomped over, leaned in way too close, and hissed, "You think you've won? I'm going to make your life miserable. I run this neighborhood. I know how to deal with rule breakers." Now, this wasn't some idle threat. Her voice was dead serious. I could see it. She was used to getting her way, and she wasn't about to stop now. But instead of backing down, I just pulled out my phone and made a quick call to my old colleague Renee. I said right where Melanie could hear me. "Hey Renee, quick question. How fast can you help me buy a street?" I could see Melanie's face morph from angry to almost scared. She had no idea who she was messing with. 15 minutes after that call, Renee called me back, said the street was owned by a small investment company, and they were desperate to sell. $2.3 million, all maintenance rights and access included. "Do it," I said. "Cash. No banks. I wanted this over today." While I was signing documents, Melanie was crawling around my property, taking pictures, measuring the distance from my tent to the curb, acting like she was prepping for a court case. She was so wrapped up in her tape measure, she didn't notice I was buying the ground under her feet. At 3:20, my phone buzzed. "Ownership transfer complete. You now own Maple Street." I looked up, saw Melanie packing up her gear, totally oblivious to the fact that her whole world was about to turn upside down. So I called city planning on speakerphone just loud enough for her to hear. "Yes, as the new owner of a private road, I control all access and usage." Melanie's head snapped up. When I told her, "Congrats on your new landlord. Mrs. Voss, looks like I now own your street," she turned sheet white. She tried to laugh it off, said I was joking. Streets belong to society. But I just showed her the purchase agreement. Her hands actually shook when she scrolled through the documents. I explained calmly that as the legal owner of the street, I decided who used it. Even the mailman needed my say-so. "You're absolutely welcome to keep living here," I told her, with my permission, of course. She actually had to lean against my fence to steady herself. And I wasn't done. "About that tent you wanted me to remove, guess we'll just see who gets to tell who what to do around here." Her voice barely above a whisper, she asked what I wanted from her. I told her straight, "I want you to learn that actions have consequences." By late afternoon, Melanie was pacing in her living room, phone glued to her ear curtains, twitching. She was calling everyone she knew, trying to find a way out. But there was no way out. 20 minutes later, she came back, trying to sound reasonable, saying, "Perhaps we can discuss this like adults." I told her I was open to that, but what she really wanted was to keep her power and make this go away. She even offered a grudging apology for calling the police, but refused to step down as HOA president. That's when I played my last card. I showed her the audio recording app on my phone. "By the way, I've recorded every threat, every lie to 911, all of it. This is a one-party consent state, Mrs. Voss." You could almost see the fight drain out of her as I laid out her options: resign, apologize to everyone she'd bullied, or face legal action, and a new reality where every neighbor had my backing. Just then, a neighbor named Tommy Wilson wandered over. "You Mr. Harrington?" Just wanted to say thanks. Melanie's made life hell for years. That was all it took soon. Half the block was on my lawn sharing their own stories. Turns out Melanie had been terrorizing people with bogus fines, threats, and endless inspections. She'd forced one woman to cut down a tree, fined another $1,500 for tall grass, and made an old man rebuild his fence 3 times. Each new story made Melanie shrink smaller and smaller until finally she just stood there, surrounded by her neighbors, completely exposed. That's when she broke, said she was resigning as HOA president, apologized to every single person there, even admitted her husband had left her that morning. Suddenly, nobody wanted revenge. We just wanted to move on. I handed the city the deed to the street for free, under the condition it stay public forever. "Power means nothing if you can't choose not to use it," I said. Melanie agreed to help build a new HOA, one that actually worked for the people instead of ruling over them. 6 months later, our property values are up, we have monthly barbecues, and folks actually smile at each other again. Even Melanie turned into a decent neighbor. So, here's the real lesson. It's not about owning a street or flexing money or even fighting the HOA. It's about standing up for yourself and your community and reminding folks that nobody gets to be a bully just because they have a clipboard. And sometimes all it takes is for one person to push back to change an entire neighborhood. Now let me ask you, ever been on the receiving end of a neighborhood tyrant or maybe had to put one in their place? Drop a comment below, share your story. I'd love to hear how you handled it and maybe just teach a few more bullies the meaning of respect.